I think that winging it is a valid strategy, but I don't, I don't have a deft hand at winging the intro.
Well, I mean, like, all you have to do is just say some shit, and then it just goes on and on until someone decides it's been too long.
Does it have to be funny, or can I?
Uh, I think that long, awkward silences are always funny.
Welcome back to the Double Dip Draft Season 6 playoffs, baby! Woohoo! Man, I think I peeked the hell out of my microphone. I apologize for that. Well, welcome back. It is the end of the normal division stage of the game, and we are entering into playoffs, which this year is a top 12 bracket. The top of the division, of each division, and the second place from Platinum were floated and left us with 8 remaining players from the 3 divisions that had to duke it out for the privilege of playing the 4 buys. And it's going to be a bit of a silly video today. It's going to be kind of cut into 2 in an effort not to talk about our own matches. We have split the difference. So the opening of this video is going to be hosted by myself, which I am, if you don't know, Spood, coach of the Southtown Sandslashers, and joining me for the first half of this video is...
Firebolt, coach of the Minnesota Magikarp.
And if you haven't watched the prior recap videos, you may not know what's going on here, but we will explain it so fast for the, inevitably vast majority of people watching this that already know what's going on. Firebolt and I are both in playoffs, and in fact are in round 1 of playoffs on the other side of this video. So what we've done is we are going to cover the first 2 matches, which are Aurora versus Scoots and Nihilus versus Cabral, and then we are going to hand it off to the other 2 hosts. I'm not sure who it's going to be at this point. I think that it is going to be Aurora and Cabral. I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure, like 99% sure it's going to be Cabral and somebody. But we're going to hand it over to them at the halfway point of this video, and they will pick up the slack, they'll cover our matches, and then they'll also break down what the playoffs bracket top 8 looks like from here. So, no spoilers about what happened to us, but we can dish a little bit on our first 2 matches.
Yeah, and speaking of which, our first match that we're going to be talking about today is going to be the game between Aurora, the coach of the Hoensbroek Haunters, versus Scoots, the coach of the Dumblespoods Army.
Yes, Dumblespoods Army. How could you forget a name like Dumblespoods Army? Genuinely. Yeah, this one, I mean, to me, going into this was kind of the crown jewel of the round 1 matches. Am I incorrect in that assumption?
No, this is definitely a huge high seed match. Aurora having maybe a little bit lower of a record than what we would expect Aurora to usually have.
Yeah, I mean, fuck, it's genuinely, what you gotta understand about this as a round 1 playoffs match is that, Aurora and Scoots have both been in not just 1, but multiple grand finals each. I think they've both been in 2, because I know Scoots was grand finals in 1 and 4, and he won 4, and Aurora's been grand finals, I think, in 2 and 3, and she won 3. So,
But they've never been in grand finals together, though.
That's true. They haven't. They've played a bit in playoffs. They had a history of playing way back in the day. If you remember Season 2, Dark Times, I apologize if you have to remember that. We had a double elimination playoffs a double elimination playoffs bracket where Aurora, I think, double eliminated Scoots and also beat him in division. So she beat Scoots 3 times in the 1 season. And I don't think they've played like a ton since then. They kind of tend to be on separate sides of the bracket, and when one of them gets to Grands, inevitably the other one doesn't. They kind of, in a sense, trade seasons back and forth of who's doing well and who's doing poorly. But this season, they both kind of eked out at roughly the same position. Aurora ended her division in 3rd, Scoots ended his division in 2nd. Scoots, and honestly, also Aurora, at the beginning of the season were anticipated to take each of the respective buys of their division. So to see them here, not even just playing for top 4, but playing for top 8 to even get into the second stage of playoffs, the fact that one of them is going home now is bonkers.
Yeah, we had a lot of, some people that came out of nowhere for certain divisions, and some that just, I don't know, Aurora, it felt like there was an evolution there as far as went 0-2 for the first 2 matches, and then after that just increasingly got better and better and better as the season went on, and eventually making it into a playoff spot, not only like a playoff spot, but not even the bottom playoff spot. It was actually in 3rd place.
Yeah, she barely sniped that in the final stretch. Actually, she did that by essentially taking it from you in the final week of Pearl.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of interested in your perspective as a fellow Pearl alum. What was your? Were you rooting for Aurora, or were you kind of just like, were you hoping that Scoots would avenge you?
No, I've got to root for my fellow Pearl people, and at this point in time, it was just like I would like to see more Pearl people move on.
Yeah, and 3 of the Pearl division, of course, in the round 1. Same as Diamond. There's only 2 Plats in round 1, so it's a little lonelier over here. There's not as much camaraderie from my end, but Pearl was a division of people who either loved or hated each other. That was kind of the impression I got. Emotions ran high in Pearl. So this just, I cannot overstate the massive importance and value and kind of hilarity of this being a round 1 playoffs match. And so looking at it, like lifetime head-to-head, I think Aurora has an edge, but it's pretty close, at the very least in terms of their playoff placing. But also, as previously said, they kind of take turns, doing well and doing poorly. Scoots and Aurora have never had particularly horrible seasons. I think Aurora only failed to make playoffs in Season 1. Scoots has made it every single time. Actually, you want to hear a fun double dip stat? Scoots and IDM are the only 2 players who have been in playoffs every single season. 1 through 6.
And Aurora just didn't make it one season, or?
Aurora did not make it. I believe it was Season 1, and she had Mega Abomasnow, and it was really bad. And I think we were doing Mega slots, and it wasn't sort of tiered accurately, or I forget exactly what it was, but basically she had a pretty rough draft, and she just didn't make it into playoff Season 1. Ever since then, she's been fine. Aurora has kind of an ongoing joke that Vincent, coach of the Hairlem Haluchas, Spoopman, she said a few times on commentary before that if he were a Pokemon, he would be Archeops, because he has Defeatist as his built-in ability. I think Aurora is Regigigas, and she has Slow Start. I think that she gets stronger the longer you leave her unleashed. And, this season, I think, was a good example of that. She had a rough start. She mostly rebounded. I think she took one extra uncharacteristic loss to Doodle after she started making her comeback, but the last couple of weeks, she's just been on fire, punching through people and only getting stronger every game.
So do you think, I think it was week 2 was Aurora versus Vincent, right?
That was week 1, actually. That was the first match.
That was week 1.
Yeah.
So if you think that Aurora had beaten Vincent game 1,
yeah,
that Vincent would have had a lot worse of a season from there on?
I don't know that it would have affected Vincent's season that much. I think, my assumption would be, they're friends in person. They literally live, up the street from each other. They go to each other's house to team build, They have a strong, IRL bond, and I think, if my understanding is correct, and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, Dutch friends, if I misconstrue your relationship here, But I think that the assumption of that round was that Aurora was going to win. Like, I think, if I were to assume Vincent's mental state, like, he was obviously going to try, but I think that he thought he would lose, and I think Aurora also thought that he would lose to her, right? She was seated above him. I think that, like, the last time they had played before they played this season was actually in a completely different context. It was in a qualification tour for World Championship. And in that context, Vincent beat Aurora. So going into this, like, maybe Vincent kind of had an edge in terms of the head-to-head, but it's hard to say because it was outside of the scope of Double Dip.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry. So we're taking, like, forever on this. I can't wait for, like, this video is going to be an hour. The first 45 minutes is going to be these two matches, and then the last 15 minutes is going to be the other two. Yeah, sorry. We just wanted to get really in-depth with it because there's only the 4 matches this week. There's only going to be the 1 recap. And I just like recording. I like the sound of my own voice. So,
of course you do.
Why don't we talk about team preview?
All right. So let's start off looking at Aurora's lineup here. We got Mega Beedrill as the Mega. We have Infernape, Togedemaru, Sylveon, Starmie, and Serena.
Yes, there is a Pokemon notably missing from Aurora's lineup that you, I think, would generally expect to see coming like 9 out of 10 games, and that's Landorus, her S-tier Lando T. We heap massive amounts of praise on it every time we talk about it, and that's because it is a great Pokemon, and certainly would have been solid in this matchup, although I understand why she didn't bring it. I helped her prep for this, and its kind of main intent was to stuff some of Garchomp's attacks. But I think what she really needed it for in hindsight was to block excessive Volt Switching, because now she does not have an answer for an Electros that likes to click Volt Switch and go bird. Because it doesn't really matter if you have resists to it. If you can't block it, then, Electros comes in front of your Starmie, or your Beedrill or something. What are you going to do? Switch into a resist, then you get switched out on and you get a counter brought in. Because on Scoots' end, he's got Mega Garchomp, Milotic, Weavile, Stakataka, Electros, and Centiskorch. And in terms of, like, defensive threats, like, Centiskorch and Milotic are really annoying. Even Mega Garchomp, to an extent, as long as not faced with an ice-type attack, generally is going to do a good job of stuffing things like Togedemaru or Infernape. And even Mega Beedrill, again, to an extent. Like, that, it's very heavily reliant on whether he goes full bulk or full attack. But, if he goes overly bulky, then maybe he won't be able to set up sweep in a way that would really threaten Aurora. But then if he goes full setup sweep, then maybe he dies with only a little bit of chip to something like a Mega Beedrill if he doesn't get off an early scale shot. So there's angles on it there. Like, Garchomp has a certain amount of flexibility, Milotic has a certain amount of flexibility. I think the only thing that we wouldn't have expected from this team is Stakataka.
Well, and even during the regular season, we noticed that it was only ever brought one other time, and it didn't really do much in that match. It really just set up Trick Room and just threw out a Gyro Ball, but pretty much died instantly after that.
Yeah, that was against Milo of the Canadian Cottonies. Scoots brought Stakataka. That was his only game he brought it. It came in, died to a snipe shot after setting up Trick Room and Gyro Balling for 30 damage. And, I mean, Scoots did go on to win that game and use the Trick Room to some success. But, I don't know, I feel like looking at this team, it doesn't really reek of Trick Room. And it actually, I mean, it shows that it was not Trick Room. As we get into it. But Stakataka just being an interesting pick because it's pretty weak to like a Serena high jump kick or a Starmie Hydro Pump or a drill run from Mega Beedrill or a close combat or a focus blast from Infernape depending on the set. Like, there's a lot of angles that you can take if you're Aurora with the team, even just the team you've brought, that can break Stakataka. But Stakataka is especially weak to Landorus Therian, which is not here. So Stakataka does get a little bit of a room to breathe. It's not perfect, but I think it has the opportunity to perhaps speak for itself.
Absolutely.
So I guess without further ado, why don't we really sink our teeth into the meat of our very first match. So early Electros lead, Aurora goes for, and I'm going to probably pump the brakes on this a handful of times just to kind of really break down the field condition, because it's important, gosh darn it, I think we should pay attention to it. This as a turn 1 is interesting. Serena comes out as the lead to stuff, more than likely, an early Garchomp or an early Milotic. Milotic loves to lead to get like an early Marvel Scale, because you want your Flame Orb to proc and give you that defensive buff. But Scoots, on his end, again, he sees no real answer to Volt Switch spam, and so he leads a Volt Switcher and says, well, if I have an advantage matchup in front of something like this where I can Flamethrower, I'll just do that. And if I'm in front of something that kind of scares me, I'll just Volt Switch out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And right here,
does indeed Volt Switch, and unfortunate for Aurora there is that it was actually a critical hit and did a lot more damage to than probably what it should have done. It takes another Volt Switch to Starmie and just and dies. You
can already see the dynamic of this match where Scoots has no reason not to just click flip turn Volt Switch, flip turn Volt Switch, right? You know, you get in front of Infernape, if Aurora guesses your flip turn wrong, and even if she stays in and predicts that you'll flip turn, you know, she's still taking damage from that flip turn. She hasn't, you know, you haven't gotten much of a chance to really immerse yourself in the sets quite yet, because it's only turn 4, but this ends up being quite a bulky physical Infernape. And so,
and then of course, like as soon as Starmie is down, Scoots immediately sends a Scorch. Basically doesn't have anything that can really resist it anymore.
Yeah, Scorch is really annoying. So again, in terms of resisting its stabs, a bulky Infernape is perfect. The one problem is that Scoots became enlightened. He's no longer running Fire Fang. He is running Fire Lash, which is, I believe it used to be the signature move of Heatmore, but something that notoriously Scorch got this generation, and it lowers the defense of the Pokemon you use it on every turn, guaranteed. Now, the problem with this, if you're Aurora, is, you know, you can sit here and slack off, but Fire Lash will only continue to do more and more damage the more it gets done to you. So you see she recovers 50 and then loses 50 and gets her defense lowered again. So unless she wants to lose that, which she definitely can't afford to do, she needs to get it back to neutral, which she does by taking a nasty hit on Sylveon. But the problem is she's just not going quite fast enough, because now she's come back in and you know, she goes for the close combat to try and get that damage, but Scoots, again, no reason not to just go into this, and obviously no reason not to click Flip Turn, especially when you're at like -2 defense.
And then that's when Stack Attacker comes in. Now, at this point in time, this is a Scarf Togedemaru, so it is stuck into Iron Head, and there's really no way at this point in time, because you know you don't necessarily know what it has. You don't want to switch in for an Ape on an Earthquake, or you don't want to like have Sylveon come in and take a hit. It's already at low. So basically, you just got to keep on going. Hope that you flinch it a number of times, and that's exactly what Aurora does.
Yeah, genuinely, I mean, at this point, it's like you're not necessarily gunning for the flinch. You're just trying to get whatever damage you can get. Maybe force a couple of flinches, maybe get a crit or two. Force some retaliatory damage with your Iron Barbs. Hope that that's enough to bring this in range of whatever you're going to go into next. And she does get a flinch and a crit, and of course gets the Barbs damage. But this goes up to +1 defense.
And it's unfortunate because look, you see how low it brings Sega down to 5% damage on the close combat. Most definitely would have killed.
Yeah.
Had it not done that. Beedrill comes in.
Yeah. So we ran this calc for the record before we get into here. Right. There's a couple different angles. We don't know if it was max HP, max defense. If it was 0-0, which it never would be, right, on Pokemon that don't tend to need to run speed, like Trick Roomers, you're gonna just find it's like a max attack plus bulk or whatever. Or it could just like hard commit to bulk if it's something like Chansey. in the event of this thing, it probably had max HP and some amount of defense. And so, if it was max HP with 0 defense, or I guess we are actually running it for max HP with 4 defense, a knockoff here had a 68% chance to kill. So it's Aurora favored, but it's not that great. I mean, it's essentially a Focus Blast. And if it's max HP, max defense, the knockoff can still kill here, but it's a much lower chance at 6.3% to Oko. So it is in Aurora's best interest here, assuming she's not running Drill Run, which I think it's fair to assume she's not. You know, Knock is unresisted, whereas obviously Poison it's immune to and it's resistant to Bug. So let's just have a look. Knockoff that's only 10%, lives on the 1, gets up another defense boost, and at this point Aurora is just so overwhelmed by this thing, you know. Rocks are up on her side of the field. She's already been chipped insanely low on Sylveon and Serena. I mean, at this point, really just, like, you need to kill Serena or just go fast with Weavile, you know. Serena is technically immune to Ice Shard because of Queenly Majesty, but Sylveon is not. But then again, obviously, Serena doesn't need to be hit by Queenly Majesty, so, like, maybe in the absolute craziest of circumstances at this point, if you're Aurora, and the Weavile is choiced, and you read every turn perfectly and get lucky, you might still be able to do something. But the final nail in the coffin is this turn.
It just, like, I think we ran this calc as well. It's just the fact that you had maybe a 40% chance to do 4 damage instead of 3 damage, which is, like, it was going to be either 3 damage or 4 damage. Pretty sure that the second Hega had about 4 health left, and it did 3 instead of 4.
Yeah, it was hard all the way down. This was just never going to be easy. Like, you know, the problem with this is Aurora felt pretty confident about the matchup going into it. She's gone on record to say that she felt good about her matchup in general against Scoots, but I personally feel like it was a tough matchup because when we were running it in scrims, you know, she had struggled a lot versus like a Scarf, Galarian Articuno that didn't come. She struggled a lot versus like my Loaded Flip Turn, which was here, but also like Metang could have done a good job of kind of menacing her team. And you know, if Scoops were playing it a little bulkier, a little more annoying, that's one thing. But in the end, she, you know, Stakataka ended up being a big blind spot, and the team makeup in general was just very punishing for her not to have Landorus, and everything kind of just went Scoots' way. Not in any major way. He didn't get any seismic crits or flinches or burns or anything. You know, arguably Aurora got better luck on this game than he did because she got the crit and the flinch on Ironhead. But Scoots getting that 1 crit on the Volt Switch and just having the ability to freely Volt Switch and freely Flip Turn back and forth, it was just too much for Aurora. You know, the bulky Infernape was a great option for Centiskorch and for Weavile, but once it was getting Fire Lashed 6 times and it lost its helmet, Scoots could just eventually force her to flinch, and unfortunately she did.
Yeah, there was also,
I should say.
There was also the one off Beedrill to try to get that knockoff. Sylveon would have definitely killed it with a Hyper Voice, but she was probably just a little bit too worried about anything that could come in than just instantly kill Sylveon.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, you know, there's no reason for Scoots to try and preserve differential. When you're in playoffs, all that matters is the win. And certainly, you know, Weavile alone does this. Milotic at its HP does this. Mega Garchomp can do this. You know, it was a Scarf Sylveon, which I don't think was properly revealed. So Scarf Sylveon could have done some work, especially given how chipped down everything was, but she needed a little more damage on Centiskorch. And I think her going for the Rapid Spin there was more about, like, killing Stakataka and then getting a potential speed advantage on Centiskorch, or, you know, and just getting rid of the rocks in general is nice too to prevent additional chip. But all you can really do in that scenario is play to your win con, and all Aurora had going for her was, like, can my Sylveon just crit through everything? And she just didn't get the chance. The Stakataka rolls were not in her favor, and Scoots makes it look very easy. The Stakataka speaks for itself, essentially 6-0ing her whole team by its lonesome. So, very grim. I mean, it was gonna be sad no matter who lost. It really sucks that Aurora and Scoots had to go up against each other round 1. And it's terrible that, you know, Aurora, who worked so hard for it all season, especially in the latter half of the season, was just going absolutely ham trying to salvage the rough start. To get kneecapped that brutally in round 1 of playoffs has gotta hurt. And my heart is with you, Aurora. I'm very sorry about that.
Yeah, I do think that Scoots, which never really had any issue getting into playoffs, the number 1 spot, obviously, but Aurora had to fight for it. Aurora had to really try in order to get the spot that she ended up getting, and it's just gone immediately.
Yeah, it's tragedy, man. It genuinely is a bummer. But hey, again, not to get super doom and gloom, I love Scoots, he's my friend. Man, it's Dumblespoods' army. Look at him marching on Hogwarts or whatever. I didn't read that book, okay? I'm just saying that I love Scoots, I love Aurora. Dumblespoods' army making the advancement to top 8. Aurora, really just the tragic figure of the season. And we can all relate to that. We've all been the tragic figure of a season. You've had tragic seasons, I've had tragic seasons. We can both sit here and you know, 07 as Aurora drifts out to sea. So we love you, Aurora. You did what you could. Good shit to Scoots, and I think that's that on that. And I think our next match will not take quite as much explaining, because we've got 2 players who I love to death, and I hate, again, picking one between the 2. It's too much for me, man. It's cruelty that I have to cover both of these matches. We've got Nihilus of the Dallas Duckletts versus Cabral of the Slinging Aegislashers. This is Cabral's 2nd playoff season, and this is Nihilus's very first. They both had kind of a similar trajectory as new players to Double Dip, where they had a first season where they kind of, you know, they performed well, but not well enough to break the mold and grab playoffs. And then the second season they got in. So for Cabral, his first season was 4. He did not manage to make playoffs. In 5, he did make playoffs over Mass, and now in 6, he's made playoffs again over Black Captain. Nihilus barely missing out to playoffs last season, actually to Cabral, because there was kind of a weird cyclical thing with him and Mass in their division last season. And then this season actually does manage to get in with a pretty fucking stellar 5-2 record. And so both of them have so much to prove. You know, Cabral having lost his very first round of playoffs last season to IDM, which was a really tough match to get off rip in your first playoffs, now has a chance to fight someone who's a lot closer to his actual skill level. And I think in a way that makes the stress even higher than if you're fighting IDM, because now you really do have a reputation you're trying to establish and maintain. And it means more if you lose to Nihilus than if you lose to IDM, right?
Oh, I mean, absolutely. You know, IDM, I hate to say it, but you almost expect to lose.
In a way, yeah. I mean, shoot.
Yeah. And it's a whole lot worse going up against someone that you're like, I know I can beat this person.
Yeah. And do not let this come across as me disparaging Nihilus. I would never, ever. Nihilus is so good. He's actually shown not only a meteoric improvement between this season and last season, but in that time, I mean, he came in as a very competent player even. But the evolution between a Season 5 Nihilus and a Season 6 Nihilus, I mean, he's unrecognizable. And Cabral, I mean, also coming off the biggest win of his career 2 weeks ago over Scoots, they're both looking hot. It's just they're both looking about as hot as each other, all right? IDM is a volcano, but they're 2 nice little Caesar's pizzas, you know? They're hot and they're ready. And they got a lot to prove, man. And they have such an interesting dynamic in their matchup. Do you want to sort of break down the team preview for me? Tell me what you see.
Okay, well, over on the side of Nihilus, we have Medicham, Empoleon, Dragalge, Mega Blastoise, Caesar, and Alola Ninetales.
Yes, and on Cabral's side, we've got Urshifu, Rapid Strike, Galarian, Weezing, Shedinja, Torkoal, Piloswine, and Leafeon. So, very textbook, you've got 2 weather setters, right? Cabral's got Torkoal, Nihilus has Ninetales. And so, Alolan Ninetales, the thing that it does is it comes in and it sets up Hail. It also sets up Aurora Veil, and it can Freeze Dry and Moonblast and Hypnosis and all that other shit, but it sets up weather. And Cabral sets up weather.
But here's the thing now. Cabral is setting up weather to set up his sweepers. Obviously you have Leafeon, which is chlorophyll. Sun will make solar beam hit in 1 turn as opposed to 2, whereas now Nihilus can counter that with hail, but then doesn't really have anything that will take advantage of that weather.
Yeah, so Nihilus has 2 main weather abusers, I guess 3 if you count Ice Cube, on his draft, which are Alolan Sandslash and Arctozolt. And that's a very scary combo, but it's hard when you are fighting like counter weather, especially a team with stuff like Piloswine and Shedinja that do actually a really good job of stopping Arctozolt, which is in a lot of matchups really difficult to stop. And I think Nihilus recognized that, but you also can't just let Cabral have his Sun, right? You can't let his potential Venusaur or the Leafeon that he brought run around with their chlorophyll and their growth and their sword stance just slapping the shit out of your team. So you need to have your counter weather even if you don't have abusers on your team. And that's kind of what this looks like. And so from team preview, like, Cabral really wants his Sun so that Leafeon can do work, but of course Nihilus has answers to Leafeon, specifically Dragalge is the scariest answer, but Scizor also, if it's not running the Weather Ball set, hard walls the hell out of it, right? Also, in addition, since there's no rain on Cabral's team, Nihilus can kind of breathe a sigh of relief, because even though Scizor is a type that would love rain normally, not having to worry about rain-boosted banded Surging Strikes two-shotting your physical wall in Scizor is very refreshing. Because, you know, Cabral has, like, the angle of, like, I have Sun and I have Rain, and I can sort of do both or pick one and hard commit. And I think picking Sun is the right call for this matchup, but it's also something where it opens up Scizor more if you have Sun, kind of counterintuitively.
Right. And the other thing that we can look at is just like Shedinja over on Cabral's side. We're kind of looking at what is on Nihilus' side that can really damage it. We're not seeing any kind of like rock setters or anything like that. We're not seeing any kind of electric Pokemon or anything like that.
Well, essentially, I mean, here's the thing. So Shedinja doesn't worry about electric Pokemon because it's got Wonder Guard, and Nihilus did bring a rocker with Empoleon, which gets its own Stealth Rocks. It's good hazard control in general because it can spin and it can defog and it can Stealth Rock up. And so you're probably going to see it running a set that's kind of like that. You know, you can run these kind of Defiant, maybe Shooka-Berry, Swords Dancey, rapid spinny, agility, like dual dance Empoleons. That's a totally valid set that people run, but a lot of the time you're going to see a kind of bulkier utility set that's about getting hazard control, knocking off items, and I think that is probably what Nihilus has here, if we're, going on team preview and not just, using the knowledge we have from having watched the game already. So Nihilus does have rocks control as long as Empoleon can navigate that, but Empoleon is very scared of the sun. Having its water damage is rough, and even though it does have that nice steel resist, to complement its water typing, that means it's not particularly scared of, fire or grass, or at least as much as any steel or water type would normally be afraid of those things. It still can't really brute force through all of that pressure. It's going to basically have to pick one move to tank at some point and use that turn to get the field advantage that it wants. Cabral has a spinner in Torkoal, and Torkoal's a pretty solid spinner, but also, it needs to do weather setting, and it's running kind of a specialty item when we get into this that sort of gimps its potential a little harder because it's not going to be boots. And you really don't want to run Heat Rock when you know that your opponent is going to have counter weather that's likely going to come in and stuff your 8-turn weather anyway. So really, it's a matchup about momentum. It's a matchup about field control. Cabral Shedinja has to be aware of knockoff and random coverage moves and hail damage and rocks damage and toxic damage, and just like the whole field is something to be scared of if you're Shedinja. But it can find very good use as a switch into things like Ninetales if it has goggles, or Dragology or something,
Right.
So if you've got any final wisdom you'd like to share with the class, I'm open to hear it, but we can also just jump into it.
I want to mention Nihilus stole a little Ninetales from me, and so I want them to lose. Crazy. Yo, call him out. Tell him how you really feel. and you're not for ratio plus your platinum. Okay, so it's also funny. Nihilus and Aurora have the same icon. Yes,
which is it's pretty goofy. All right, let's see how it started. This is about the opener that I would expect. Cabral doing an early U-turn just to kind of get the scout. Nihilus going for a sort of neutral Dragon Pulse to kind of get a little damage on everything. And we see that Torkoal is Eject Button, which is a very non-standard set. Now, unfortunately, this is definitely not the Weather Ball set. And Nihilus reveals it is Dual Wing Beat Technician, which is actually very threatening. This thing already down to 27% when it's one of your main physical walls and it doesn't have any reliable way to heal is very scary.
Yeah, it does get up rocks, but at the same time, just the sun almost immediately ends as soon as that happens.
Yep.
Tanking a Whirlpool there with Shedinja,
yep.
And after that, it's just kind of like, I'm going to try to protect, but I gotta get out.
I like the Whirlpool tech. I think that's, probably supposed to trap Urshifu. I'm not really sure what else on this team it wants to stay in front of like that.
No, this is kind of cool. It's where Cabral finally decides, hey, I don't want to deal with you, so I'm going to start roaring, and we're just gonna switch. We're gonna switch that out.
Yeah. Now this thing losing its Eviolite is tough for it, just kind of tanking the hits that it wants to tank. Cabral goes into Shedinja and does reveal it is safety goggles here. But obviously this thing is Dual Wing Beat, which is kind of scary. Nihilus kind of calls his bluff and says, you're not going to fucking Will-O-Wisp me right now. Get out of here. And he's right to do that. Picking up that momentum, that Dual Wing Beat does so much damage with no Eviolite, and the Roar is also annoying because Nihilus' Pokemon are getting chipped by Hail and Rocks. And this Shedinja just keeps forcing stuff out. Now, we get a back-to-back tragedy for Cabral. Will-O-Miss here, and then Will-O-Miss here as well. I think Nihilus... had assumed, or I guess hadn't noticed that it had already revealed that it was Goggles, but obviously when it didn't die that turn to Ninetales, that's when the light bulb blinks and you're like, okay, wait, it's not taking chip damage from Hail, so it's Goggles, now I have to go into something that'll actually hit it. And in both of these instances, Cabral missing what would have been very valuable chip, although he did get some good intel by seeing that Ninetales was Boots, and knowing now that the Hail is only ever going to be 4 turns, Veil's only ever going to be 4 turns, stuff like that.
And things keep on going like this. Like they're positioned to a point now where just not a lot of things are taking damage, or if they are, they're healing it back up. And so at this point in time, it's kind of just a who's gonna mess up first.
Yeah, it's a battle for field control. Cabral very cleverly goes for the defog there to bring his Shedinja back into play, because Nihilus also cleverly, when he realizes that it's safety goggles, he knows it can't be Boots and therefore will die on rocks on switching. So this thing is also a very scary set. The Acid Armor Rest Talk with Sludge Wave. And this is a great set. It is hard-walled by Shedinja, but, it is a great set for the rest of this whole team. And Cabral hasn't forced it to leave by going into Shedinja, and so it kind of just keeps getting damaged. Cabral decides to go for the Roar, gets rid of that, and here's where the big blunder happens. This is the first huge piece of progress that we've made this game, and Cabral switches his Poison Pokemon into his Zen Headbutt and loses it instantly, which is not massively pleasant.
Obviously, we saw that Surging Strikes there was not able to do half damage to Caesar, therefore it would not have killed had he left it in, so he had to switch it out, and that's what ended up losing Piloswine.
Yep, and Cabral is massively on the back foot here, because everything he has gets 1 or 2 shot by dual Wing Beat. He's also essentially revealed now that he's Scarf, or at least, Nihilus knows that the Urshifu is not banded and therefore can't 2-shot with Surging Strikes. But close combat is a little scarier because it can get the really high crit damage. So Nihilus goes ahead and sacks this. He doesn't really need it anymore. He only really needs Scyther, or Scizor. But that dual Wing Beat dodge is huge for Leafeon. And Cabral actually catches a second lease on life by Wish Passing into Torkoal. Recovers a lot of HP and Dragalge back to normal. Fire Blast, doing okay damage, and certainly would threaten things that aren't this out, but Nihilus is not that scared of it.
And with Acid Armor, obviously it's going to help it against Torkoal's Earth Power, which is doing decent-ish damage, but the problem is that it's not stab, so it's not doing a ton of damage, and the thing that we're looking at is that Sludge Bomb does a lot of damage that Torkoal is not super he's not able to heal it up like Dragalge is able to do with the rest and Sleep Talk.
Yeah.
So
it's a lot slower for Cabral to get the progress that he wants, and it's a lot more reliant on getting good rolls. He's actually, which he is getting here. Nihilus' Sleep Talk rolls were fucking horrible the whole game. He also didn't get any poisons off of Sludge Bomb, which is kind of unfortunate too. But in general, like what you said, this Earth Power could potentially eventually break this Dragalge if he'd gotten the Spadef drop way sooner. But he unfortunately didn't. Leafeon does not live the Sludge Bomb, and it's just impossible for Cabral to break through Bartholomew at this point.
Yeah, and honestly, I think he had brought he brought Leafeon out there to try to get that wish again, and it just didn't work out, obviously, because Dragalge just went for a Sludge Bomb instead of a rep.
Yeah.
So I think it was just a missed call on Cabral.
Yeah, Cabral lost his answer to this too early. Piloswine could have done it. Galarian Weezing potentially could have forced it to switch with Strange Steam or maybe Pain Split. There were options. And Shedinja, like we said earlier, Shedinja hard-walled it, does not take any damage from any of these moves. So if Cabral had positioned a little better around the Dragalge, he may not have gotten swept by it like he did. And he did find opportunities in the end, kind of accidentally bluffing maybe a Fire Punch on Scizor that scared out Nihilus, that saved him from just getting swept by dual Wing Beat on all of his Pokemon when the chips were really, really down. But by the time it got to Dragalge, Cabral had lost too many of his checks, he positioned a little too poorly, Nihilus got all the momentum he needed, he was making these aggressive doubles, and just outplayed him. I mean, Clean showed that he is a strong player. Him getting into playoffs, not a fluke, and looks very strong going into round 2 of playoffs over Cabral.
Yeah, I mean, it was a really tight fight, for 30 turns, and then just the one misstep there.
Yeah,
and you saw how fast it just changes.
It's crazy, and again, that could have totally been Nihilus's game to choke. It would have been very easy to get stressed out. If you were here when the actual game was being played, the turns were ridiculously long. I mean, we're talking orders of magnitude of I I think this match took a little under 2 hours of real time and only 54 turns. So every turn was several minutes of like furious calcing. What's funny about this is they both accused each other of being the one that was taking a long time. So I think that's funny. I don't know who to believe. I think it's probably true on both ends to some extent. But obviously, like, by the end of it, Cabral was sitting there doing the lion's share of the calcing, trying to figure out if there was any way to salvage his position once the Scizor had switched out. But really, it was just a matter of, like, the weather war kind of didn't pan out in Cabral's favor. You know, he didn't get a chance to showcase any of the counterplay tech that he wanted. You know, eject button got burned too early to really swing the momentum in his favor. And Nihilus just played too competently, too safe, too close to the chest. Cabral just couldn't break the core.
And so that brings an end to our second match, 5-0, with Nihilus then moving on to the next round.
That's right. He's got the pleasure of fighting Vincent of the Hairlin Haluchas, who, again, thus far the only player in the division, in the league, I should say, in playoffs including, that is not... He's undefeated, basically, is what I'm trying to say. I really did that roundabout. I kind of fumbled the bag on that. Vincent is currently undefeated, so...
Luckily, Mass did end up killing the dog.
That's true. Zamazenta has taken it.
Zamazenta is not immortal, as we were led to believe it was
previously established. Yeah, and hey, maybe the god just needs to bleed a little bit for Nihilus to pounce on that. But I'm genuinely, Nihilus did so great, and Scoots did great as well. We didn't really talk about it earlier, but Scoots is going on to play Chemith, and that's a really interesting, really storied match. And hopefully you will hear more about it from our other two co-hosts, which are going to tag in here. And also, I kind of exactly called this. It's been about 45 minutes since we started. So, oops, we went for a really long time. I'm sorry, Cabral and the viewing audience. I hope that wasn't insanely boring. I just really like it. I just wanted to talk about it. I'm a double dip guy, I like getting introspective and analytical. But this is going to be where you will sign off with us, and we're going to shunt you on over to our two friends walking down the street. Say goodbye to the people, Firebolt, and maybe they'll hear from you in the next week. Maybe not. We'll see.
Yeah, if you haven't had enough of me yet, then maybe we'll see you next time.
All right, over to you, Cabral.
All right, thank you, Spood, for passing that to us. Now we are going to be looking at the second part of this bracket here with me, Aura of the Hoensbroek Hunters, and joining me is this very weird-looking Cabral wearing an unconvincing mustache.
Yes, I am very much here today. I'm Cabral. I'm here to talk about a lot of... okay, never mind. That's not working. Instead of Cabral, it's me, Spoopman of the Hairlin Haluchas, or people call me Vincent. That's also fine.
Yes, we are here to look at the second part of the draft. Cabral can't be here due to some issues in his personal life, which is fine. We, best wishes to him. Which means Vincent will be here to fill out that spot.
Absolutely, and I'm very grateful to be here because I love talking about these matches and speculating about everything. Let's just hope they take long so we can talk about a lot of stuff.
Yeah, well, the matches so far have been quite slobber knockers, so we can go ahead and look at the first matchup here of Nick of the Loafville Lanturns fighting Spood of the Southtown Sandslashers. To see if they are faring any better, or if the slaughter of round one here continues.
We'll see how the battle between these two good friends will continue.
Yes, they are close. They have lived together even. It's if you look at their teams initially here, we do see that Spood has to face off against another Ghost Fire type, and he's brought Rampa to deal with that every time. And it's been a decent answer to it so far.
I mean, it's immune to Ghost, it's resistant to fire. What's not to love about it?
Yeah, we also see the return of Emolga.
And a very lovely Pokemon that's definitely Tropius.
Yeah, I forget what it's even called. The
Drotagon.
Drudigan, that's what it's called. Yeah, it has done a lot of good work for Nick. Like, it is surprisingly bulky, especially on the physical side. It can learn Sheer Force, can learn Rough Skin.
Wait, it has Sheer Force?
This thing can learn Sheer Force. It doesn't have too many moves that make good use of it, but this thing can learn Sheer Force.
Oh my god. How have I
Yeah,
not seen this before? Time to draft it
Yeah.
next season?
Yeah, I'd say let's hop into this match here to see how it applies its abilities this time around.
Exactly, and the start goes with an Araquanid and a Drudigan, and the play starts off amazingly for Cody. Throwing in Magikarp, bouncing the Stealth Rocks, and then getting up Sticky Webs in 2 turns, Toxicking the Tropius, and then getting Dragon-tailed out. I mean, could this 3 turns have gone any better for Cody?
Maybe like without the getting Dragon-tailed out, but yeah. It's a very powerful opening for Cody, and Nick does sort of just like set it back by just getting up his rocks anyway.
Yeah.
But it like tempo-wise, it does put him behind a little bit, and also we see this little funny Hoopa gets dragged out by one of the Dragon Tails.
Exactly, and it's just going to sub up a little bit and throw out a nasty blood, and Chansey is suddenly sweating bullets. Going into Comfy and getting Side Shocked to Oblivion. Yeah, but it's fine. Absol comes here, it's a Mega, so it can probably take it. Oh, never mind, it dies to Signal Beam.
Yeah, the web's just making all of Nick's steam slightly too slow. He could have potentially gotten something done here by getting a Sucker Punch off, and then maybe hitting it with a Grassy Glide.
Yeah, but that's just not happening here. And we see Rillaboom dying, Marowak dying, and then it's just Drudigan and Chansey, and well, we just talked about Tropius being quite tanky, but not this tanky, sadly.
Yeah, it does have a higher like physical defense, but even it is not like equipped to handle this. And this Chansey, it's probably only packing Seismic Toss as its offensive option, which means it can't even touch Hoopa as it's a Ghost type.
So sadly, very unsurprisingly, once the grassy terrain runs out, we just saw it doing 57%. Chansey can't out-heal this, and the win goes to Cody, a 6-0 Hoopa sweep.
Yeah, it is an absolute slaughter here, week 1. It is ridiculous. We have seen nothing better than a 4-0, I believe.
Yeah, Cody is catching up a lot in what he missed, like in the preseason, in like the regular season. And now he just goes in, first match, absolutely just murders Nick outright. And the next opponent should really watch out for this, because he's looking for blood.
Yeah, Cody only like barely sneaking into that 4th slot, while Nick was actually the 2nd seed in the Pearl division. And Cody is just over here being like, hey, it's no mistake that I'm here. I am here, and I'm here to take it all.
Exactly, because there are 2 factors that can get you in playoffs, RNG and luck, and Spood very much wants to... Sorry, not RNG and luck, what am I saying?
It's the same
RNG
thing.
and skill, RNG and skill. And Spood is here to say, oh boy, I'm all skill.
Yes, and we do have one more match to talk about here.
Exactly, for Claire of the Maryland Manectrics versus Firebolt of the Minnesota Magikarps are facing off against each other.
It's a very exciting match as well here. All of the people here in for week 1 playoffs, very good. Put in a lot of time and effort to make it here.
Also, I just noticed that we had a match with Chansey, and now we have a match with Blissey, which is always lovely to see.
Yeah, it's the eggs. Can I offer you an egg in this trying time? Firebolt here, the last sort of bastion for Pearl Division in the first week at least, as every other Pearl Division person has been knocked out already. So we'll have to see if he can hold it down, or if Claire is gonna reduce it down to just you on the opposite end.
I'm having serious flashbacks to past seasons where this has happened. Like, I think this is like the 3rd time that's gonna happen. That we're just in like one division that just gets kicked out round 1.
Yeah, I mean it is always Pokemon is what it is. One person always has to be knocked out every match, especially here in the single elimination playoffs.
Exactly, and having 3 divisions, it makes it only more likely that one division just doesn't make it.
Yeah, the odds are usually stacked against at least one of the divisions, and this time it happens to be Pearl Division. However, if you look at this match here, we see not like the most unconventional things from either side. Like we've definitely seen these Pokemon do things in the past, do well in the past. I think this might be one of the earlier attempts that Avalok has come. I don't think we've seen too much of that, but it is here. It is a decent option against Firebolt's team. Like Crocodile does not want to take hits from this thing. Aerodactyl doesn't want to take hits from this thing.
Absolutely, it can pretty much easily come in, tank a hit, then Avalanche for lethal. And or body press the Aggron or Blissey, so it works pretty well in this context.
Yeah, and on the opposite end, we have Firebolt, who's bringing along Cramorant. Always a fun Pokemon.
Always amazing to see that Mon. I don't know, like, I always underestimate the Mon. If you look at its stats, it's not that good, but then it randomly survives a hit, hits too hard with Surf, gets a Gold Missile off, and then suddenly you're down to Mons and you're sitting here like, how did this happen? And why are the rest of my Mons paralyzed?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Firebolt has had it in previous season, and that's actually like made its work to good effect. So let's see how it fares here against Claire.
Absolutely. And we start with the Buzzwole versus Aerodactyl, and I can tell you one thing for sure, Buzzwole does not want to stay into this.
No, a dual Wingweed will blow this thing, even if it is like Sash or if it has some sort of like flying resist variant. Aerodactyl hits very hard on that side.
Exactly, but Avalok takes it easily and then recovers up. And then hits...
Yep, hits that body press. It deals a hefty amount for a resist.
Exactly, and then the Avalanche kills the Cramorant, but not before the Cramorant hits back with the Gold Missile, and that's all we see of Cramorant for the rest of this
Gold
match.
Missile, Gold Missile always hitting for 25% of whatever Pokemon it's facing off against, even like...
Did the Blissey just... and now Shadow?
Yeah,
What's
this
going on?
Blissey is a very offensive set, actually. It is here to finish off things like... or like punish things for like switching in, like this the Steelix, or maybe this Avalok. It actually did finish off the Poltergeist there.
The fact that worked, I'm like very impressed. I love to see stuff like that. And now we have the lovely matchup, Steelix versus Aggron, which as you can see is sadly quite one-sided.
Yeah, it's just sort of like they both Earthquake at each other. However, one of them is 4 times weak, with the other only being 2 times weak. And also having Stab.
Exactly. So now we get Buzzwole again. Here comes the Flamethrower. I'd actually kind of surprised. Like, if the Blissey has Serene Grace, that would actually be kind of a nice play. To get, like, a higher chance for the bird. But sadly, Firebolt hard switches into Aerodactyl and eats a close combat to the face. Which Aerodactyl, even though it's flying type, it's also rock type. It doesn't resist. And then dies to it.
Yeah, and here we see this Indeedee, who is going to put in quite a bit of work, as we see it like outspeed this Crocodile, kill it, and even take this Signal Beam from Raichu. Yeah,
why is this thing so surprisingly tanky?
It might be on Assault Vest, we're not entirely sure, but like it is living hits confidently and putting in the good work for Claire, putting a dent in Firebolt.
Exactly.
And now Firebolt faces off against a very, very angry Buzzwole.
Yeah, the burn is dodged, but doesn't matter. Buzzwole just gets almost all its HP back because it steals so much from Leech Life.
Yeah, he might have been able to start something with a Psychic there, but instead we get a Signal Beam and a death at the end of Leech Life.
Yes, and that is the end of the match, Claire versus Firebolt, which means the Pearl Division is all but knocked out, except for, well, me.
Yes, you are the only person left. We did actually see like some interesting sets here from both sides, because you wouldn't expect, for instance, like a Poltergeist to hit Shell Smash in front of a Chansey, because that's kind of, you know, not really. That's the one thing you're expecting to enter here. But Clara was expecting it to be a more passive set to bring something like Toxic, and that's why she brought a Lumberry on it.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, Firebolt's expecting Claire to expect him to have a more passive Blissey like that, brings a more offensive set that punishes Claire.
Yeah, this was like quite literally such a situation, like, but I knew that you knew that I knew that you knew that I knew that you knew, and that's how like Shadow Ball Blissey was born, that actually destroyed Poltergeist.
Yeah, like Blissey, it has a base 75 special attack, which is, it's not great, but it's doable. Far from unusable. Like that is more special attack than Nidoking has, I believe. I think Nidoking only has 73. Granted, it doesn't have sheer force, but you know.
Yeah, true. Like that. Like I keep forgetting how much damage sheer force adds. It's really stupid.
Sheer force is incredibly powerful.
Exactly.
But yeah, like we do see it sort of like the power that it does bring in it killing the poltergeist, and then sort of the power that it lacks in this Buzzwole, just not giving a single shit about that flamethrower.
Yeah, Buzzwole's here to take a hit and then punch hard, thrice as hard. And then 4 times as hard, and then 5 times as hard, because Beast Boost is an absolute okay ability.
I mean, the Beast Boost didn't do all that much, but yeah.
No, fair enough, but in theory.
Yeah, it can put in a lot of work.
Absolutely. Well, let's see the brackets for how's it going to fare for the rest of the playoffs.
Yes, if we clock in all of these results, I'll take the top 2 if you take the bottom 2. At the top, in the top half of the bracket, we have Scoots of the Dumblespoods army facing off against Kenneth of the Near-the-Well Nidokings, and Nihilus of the Dallas Duckletts facing off against Vincent of the Hirlanhal Luchas.
Hey, that's me! And then in the other side of the brackets, we have Spood of the Southtown Sandslashers versus Bananas of the Don't Drop That Dedenes.
Yeah, I would be very mad if you forgot that name.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's so fun to say every time.
I know, but honestly, actually kind of props for creative name. But yeah, I actually I only actually found out like last week that he was called Bananas. I actually never really paid attention in the replays. Anyways, and then we have Claire of the Maryland Manectrics versus IDM of the Brussels Espions.
Yes, it is, you know, after having 4 very just slaughters of matches, 4 or worse, for everyone who, or better, for everyone who made it here this week, now facing off against the champions at an IDM skates, second seed of Plat Division. Like, nobody is here that does not, like, deserve to be here. Everybody has put in a lot of work, a lot of effort, a lot of team building, a lot of heat sets, maybe a bit of like spicy luck here and there.
Exactly. Like nobody is safe here. Every match can go any way. Like you might like sort of expect some matches to go one way or another, and yes, some maybe a little bit favored. But like this is Pokemon. Get one freeze, get one burn, get one confusion, get any stat drop, get a lucky crit, and it can go 180 in a breath.
Yes, and everybody here, of course, looking like, you know, everyone here is now like one step closer to that you know, playoffs finale to getting that win.
Absolutely. And then of course to get the final trophy, the win of season 6 of Double Dip Draft.
It's just next week, that's going to be the final week that we have of just like regular week, and then the top 4 will happen, which is going to just be like one live stream as it is every year.
Absolutely, and then we just have all the games consecutively behind each other. All the teams are also required to prepare any possible scenario of what they have to face, which are 3 teams in total. But luckily they also do get a week extra to prepare for that.
Yes, 3 teams total for every like possible permutation of match that they can expect. But of course they still have to make it there first.
That is true. So for now, everyone focus on this week. Because if you lose once, you're out for good.
Is there anyone you think like what is your prediction here for top 4?
Well, throw an easy one. Of course, I want myself to win against Nihilus. That would be a very obvious one. So
I'll be biased there.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. A little weird one is Scoots against Kenneth. Technically, if you look at the history and the scores on the website, you'd say that Scoots has a slight advantage, but I really believe in Kenneth here. I think Kenneth can take this win, and then I won't have to fight Scoots again in the whole semifinals. Damn, last time that ended up horribly.
Yeah, I do think all of the matches that we have lined up here are gonna be like very heat, because like Bananas, you know, newcomer this season, has put in the work, has come in first in his in Diamond Division. Now facing off against Cody, a former champion, and who just sticks out Nick like it wasn't nothing.
Exactly. Like, I do hope that Bananas wins. Like, nothing against Cody, of course, but I always love it. I always like go for the ones that haven't been champion before. And it goes also for Claire versus IDM. IDM is an absolute stellar contender, but he's like one of those people that you always like hope like in most like cases IDM wins matches. Like, he's amazing at the game. He's one of the best players we have. But considering he already won 2 seasons, actually, it's always nice to see if someone else can take that spot.
Yeah, speaking of which, there's actually only 2 champions left. Only Spood and IDM are like still standing that have had a win previously. Everybody else is now foaming at the mouth to get that first dub. And especially the top side of bracket here has never had a champion before.
Scoots actually won season 4, I think.
Am I still...
Yeah. Like, it was that season where I lost on the 5% stupid air slash, so he went to finals against Kemet.
Oh, he did, yes.
Exactly, and IDM and I were just sitting in the bronze match, talking to each other like, why are we here? Because I believe it was also... I think we both lost the semi-finals because of RNG.
Yeah, it still leaves like 5 out of the 8 people left standing to be potential new champions here.
Absolutely. So I really hope that they pull through and we get a nice new champion for this season. Please let it be me. Please let it be me. Please let it be me. Please let it be me.
Yeah.
I'm not
But
biased.
either way, we are looking at 4 very exciting matches for next week that can go any which way.
Absolutely. And we're very excited to see that. But we'll have to wait for that until next week.
Yes. And of course, best of luck to everyone team building. Best of luck to everyone waiting.
Absolutely.
for these matches to happen.
Oh yeah, there is always a lot of waiting. But also a lot of thinking, a lot of team building, and a lot of fun to be had. Because no matter who wins or loses, honestly, the games themselves to watch or play are just spectacular, each single one of them. So, and that's what we're all here for.
Of course, the end goal is always for everyone to have a good time doing this, not, ridiculous amounts of stress and anxiety and physical illness.
Absolutely. Everything is completely okay. Everyone is healthy and totally not in agony. That's fine.
I think that wraps us up for this week of the playoffs. You can join us again next week. We're not sure who's going to do those playoffs, that commentary yet. So, one more thing to stay tuned for.
Absolutely. So we will hopefully see you next week when we look at the top 8 and who will be taking the spots for the semi-finals.
With that, bye-bye.
Have a good night. Goodbye.